But some of you have read the 10X books. I want to talk about the gap in the gain. Okay. It's not a skill thing, it's a mindset thing. Okay. Skills, and then we have mindset. And we need a combination of both of those, right? And we talked a little bit about skills on the dialing and things like that today. And we have a lot of things, videos and things on that. But I do want to cover this. I'm going to share my screen. Tell me if you guys can see that. Can you, everybody see that? Thumbs up. Anybody see a blank screen? A white piece of paper, basically. Okay. This is the blank screen. Okay, perfect. That's what we need. Thank you. Okay, so the gap in the gain. So let me see if I can do this. Okay, can you see that? Everybody see a brain? That's your brain. Did you know that? Isn't that weird? All our brains look the same, don't they? All right, so that's the brain. This is from this Gap in the Gain, Dan Sullivan, strategic coach, okay? So this is your brain. And what we have is we have the gap and then we have the gain, okay? Most ambitious people, if they're ambitious some way, somehow, are unhappy because they measure their progress. It's how they measure their progress. Are they measuring it in the gap or the gain? All right. So I'm going to cover this. There's a starting point, like you heard from everybody on this call today. There's a starting point. Everybody starts somewhere. My starting point is different than yours. Yours is different from Justin's. Justin's is different from Darlene's, etc. Okay. So then we have this ideal of what it should be, what things should look like. It's really like a perfection kind of mindset, right? The ideal is a moving target, according to Dan Sullivan and in this book. It's sort of out there on the horizon and out of reach. It's never going to be perfect, right? But it's this thought in our head that this is the ideal, right? And then what we tend to do, everybody tends to do, is we visualize the ideal, which is good. You should visualize your ideal. And then we start and we work, and then we get to where we've achieved something. Where you've achieved is the progress you've made, right? From where you started. And so far in this, you can look, the gap and the gain is the same, right? In this picture I have. Hopefully y'all are following me on this. Here's where the differences come into play. When you're in the gap, we measure from what we've achieved up to this point, our progress, to what we think our ideal should be, okay? Where do goals come in? Goals help us get to what we've achieved and where we're going, but you're never going to get to the ideal, because the ideal is a perfect picture in your mind, and there's never going to be a perfect picture. But the goals help you start along the path that gives you the direction. So what happens is when you're in the gap, what we do is we measure the difference between what we've achieved so far, or the progress we've made, and the ideal, okay? And so what our mindset becomes is we're thinking about where we should be and the failure we've created and the frustration that's happened. And we're thinking about the disappointment, and we have low self-esteem because we're measuring against the ideal and not of what we've achieved. We have guilt, depression, negative self-talk. We're talking negative instead of positive. We're isolating. This is when you're in the gap, okay? The problem comes is because people measure themselves against their ideal when they're in the gap. Okay. This is your brain when you're in the gap. I'm like a school teacher. I was never a school teacher. Okay. In the game, here's what we do. We measure where we started to what we've achieved. We look at our progress so far. We got on the phones. We started making phone calls. We got licensed. We did the training page. We started the process. We're talking to our warm market. We measure from where we start to what we've achieved so far. That's when you're in the game. That's when you're noticing successes. You're giving yourself credit for the successes that you've already had, right? It's not your ideal. It's not that picture of where you think it should be, but you're measuring, you're giving yourself credit, you're giving yourself the grace to learn and achieve from where you are. You have satisfaction that this is good for you, that you're doing the right thing. Confidence, you're gaining confidence because you've started taking some steps and some action, and you have a high self-esteem because of that. Enjoyment, it starts to be a little bit fun when you're hanging out with people who are excited that you're in their house, right? That are excited that you help their family. You start looking at the joy of it. They're optimistic about where you can go, what's happening in your life. Positive self-talk. You're telling yourself the good things. This is big. This is big. You're telling yourself the good things you've achieved. Yes, it's not your ideal. It's not perfection, but you've achieved a lot if you look back on it and give yourself credit. Positive association. You're not isolating. You're coming to the meetings, you're on these Zooms, you're talking to people who are doing it and not hanging out with the people who are not doing it. You're talking to the people who are positive and not the people that are negative. This is the gain, okay? This is your super brain. Does anybody find this fun like I do? So this is the gap and the gain. Here, what we're doing is we're measuring ourselves against when we're in the gap from where our progress is to the ideal. Here we're measuring from where our previous self was, where we previously were before we even thought about coming on with the alliance. We're measuring that to what we've achieved so far. We all are in the gap sometimes, but if we can think to ourselves, how quickly can I get out? Like if you can start thinking, if you're talking negatively or down on yourself, that you can start getting into the gain as fast as possible. That's how you change your thought process. We all think negative. We all aren't happy where we are. I'm not happy where I am. I've been doing this 24 years. I'm excited about where I am. I'm excited about the future, but it's not my ideal of where I should be. So I'm talking to myself as much as I'm talking to anybody else. But if you can switch that mindset and say, okay, Noelle, you have come this far. You can do this. You already, you did become partner. Things like that. Start thinking to yourself about where you are in the gain and talking to yourself about that instead of where you are in the gap. And you'll go far in this, especially when you're dialing and talking and getting started. Okay? Does this help anybody? Or does it just help me? I have to like these moments where I'm thinking something and I'm like, I shouldn't be thinking this. How can I make this a positive? So if you can find learning in everything you're doing, every step, yes, it's not going to be your ideal, but if you can find a learning in it that you learned from it, and at the end of the night, just think about, or maybe even write down in a journal or somewhere, even a pad of paper next to your bed, what are 3 things that I learned today? And then give yourself credit for that. And don't worry about the stuff, well, I had all these no-shows, or I only sat with 2. Take the word only out. Okay. When you're using the word only, you're in the gap. Okay. All right. Any thoughts or questions on this? I'm open to have any of them if anybody wants to open up and see if this at all helped anybody.
I'll say something, Noelle.
Go ahead, Amanda.
No, I just want to share with everybody, like I've been working my tail off and doing everything I could to build a business and get good at sales and the whole 9 yards. I'm a year and 7 months into this. I shattered my leg 6 months ago, so I was a year and a month into the business. And rather than taking that experience and getting distraught and quitting because, oh darn, I should be doing this, I could be doing this should have happened, this should have happened. Instead, I absolutely put myself in the game. I didn't want to linger in the gap, and trust me, my mind wanted to go to the gap. As I was laying there in the hospital bed, my My mind really wanted to go into the gap and stay there, but no, it's 1,000%. The 6 inches between our ears makes all the difference in the world. And it's like Noelle's always telling us, get your mind right, right? That's exactly what it's about. And so I turned that whole month and a half hospital stay into something positive and decided that I would brush up on some other things and watch trainings and look at videos and what can I do to better myself. And so it wasn't, darn it, look how far I'd gotten and look where I'm at now. It was more like, look how awesome. Look where I was the day that I started this a year and a month ago, and look where I am now. And where am I going? Let's get in the game. So yeah, 1,000%.
And you have a great story too, Amanda, and your attitude when you're talking to people doesn't like that negative. We all have the negatives, right? It's okay to do that, but it doesn't show through when you're talking to Amanda because she quickly goes to the gain. It's like her mindset. And I was just out in Albuquerque like a week ago, was it? I think. And you couldn't tell, but this poor lady, you'll see her at what do you call it? Stage to Success in April.
Yeah. No more
And,
wheelchair. I'm now using forearm crutches. So yay. Yep.
You didn't have those when I was out there last week.
No, I literally just graduated to them this week. So baby steps.
But make sure you ask Amanda about it. She'll tell you more about it. Gosh, to think of having to go through something like that and the way you're coming out of it like a warrior, man. So proud of what you're doing.
That's what we got to do. So thank you, Noelle. I appreciate you.
And Amanda's like number one or number two. We'll call number one, but I think is right up there in the enrollments for estate planning so far for the year. So congratulations, killing it.
Fight like a tiger. Fight. Thanks,
Fighter. Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for speaking up. I know we went a little bit longer. It's okay. Tell you what, go get it. Get after it. Let's go. Let's do this. And we'll see you on Thursday on the next one. Okay. Have a good day.